everyone. My name is Zoom. Today I'm going to present how Andy Warhol influenced the art world. First, I will start with the intro and thesis. Second, I will start with background, and third is pop art movement and inspiration technique, and last, I will talk about discussion and conclusion. Let's move on with the introduction. Andy Warhol had a significant effect on the path of art history and American culture, both for Americans and for the rest of the world. The purpose of the research is to show how Andy Warhol influenced the art world. This paper examines the effect of how Andy Warhol influenced the art world on and pop art movement, technique, and inspiration. Let's move on to the background. Moreover, in 1960, Andy Warhol's most iconic work, called Campbell Soup, cans. It's just a can, but Warhol used everything around, simple object around him, turned it into an excellent artwork, and it is another reason why most people use him as an inspiration. Furthermore, in 1968, Andy Warhol was shot and badly injured by Valerie Solana. She is a part of the radical American feminists between 1963 and 1968. Warhol made almost 650 films, and this is the Campbell Soup can. This is the news that Warhol been shot by Valerie Solana, and it is a picture that show him doing some film. Let's begin with pop art movement. What is pop art movement? Is by creating painting or sculpture of mass culture object and media star. The pop art movement aims to blur the boundary between high art and low culture. The concept that there is no hierarchy of culture and that art may borrow from any source has been one of the most influential characteristics of pop art, and the art should be the art that serving for the people, not just the elite people. Let's come with the first point. Describe pop art in the community. According to Richard H. in 1957, this described the style writing pop art is a popular, transcend, explainable, low-cost, mass-produced, young, witty, sexy, gimmicky, and glamorous and big business. Let's move on to the second point. Pop art in American culture. American pop art reached its peak in the 60s. The world of advertisement and consumption had adopted and reappropriated the code of modern art. American artists thus had to push further their thought process by looking for more serious and in-depth topics to distance art from manufactured artifacts. The British had a more distant vision of American pop culture influenced by their European eyes. This resulted in art characterized by its romanticism and proximity with emotion and laughter. Bombarded by daily publicity and mass production of everyday objects, American artists were bound to have a different tone. Coupled with the contested war in Vietnam, the result art was more brutal and aggressive. Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper John were emblematic painters of American pop art. Co-encouraged Schwarzenegger Dadaist work. Rauschenberg delivered a clear criticism of contemporary societies. Roy Lichtenstein is probably one of the methods of American pop art known for his humor, his comic book reference, and use of text within his production. He defined his work as hard-edged but composed in a soft manner. Andy Warhol painting like Restenstein direct reference the familiar iconized image of American pop culture but treat the theme in an impersonal and cold manner. This treatment of art reflects an idealization and paradoxical hatred of mass product. About the last point, pop art in US and British. Pop art was born in Great Britain at a time where it was heavily influenced by American culture. A lot of biggest names of the movement were American. There is thus a strong proximity and connection between movement as it evolved in the US and England. However, differences can be found in the US. Pop art is a return to composition described as hard-edged, use mundane reality, popular culture, irony, and sarcasm. On the other hand, in England, the movement started out with a more academic vision. The focus was put on energetic and paradoxical figuration of American pop culture. At its can be find the work of Richard Hamilton. They use parody and self-depreciation as a way to denounce the powerful Western system of manipulation, which affected societal behavior all the while bringing it to material propriety. English pop art was fed by American culture, but through the lens of distance, whereas American pop art was the direct result of this American dream, a very central idea in American identity at the time. On another main point, the second main point is inspiration. It is believed that Andy Warhol influence in the art world may cause inspiration for other artists and fashion or even in lifestyle or society. As this quotation say, they always say, time change, things change, but you have to change them yourself. This quotation was spoken by the brilliant pop artist who named Andy Warhol. Let's begin with the first point, influence on artists. There are the obvious disciples, Jeff Koons, Takashi Murakami, Damien Hirst, and Sturtevant. But here are the 10 more artists influenced by Warhol. Cale co-founded the Velvet Underground with a bandmate Lou Reed. The Velvet were promoted house band of Factory in 1960, and their influence continues today. The second point is influence on fashion. Warhol influence seeped into the mass market fashion and not just in the US. British Bontiqueurs, Biba and Mr. Freedom began commissioning pop art printed dresses and t-shirts in the 1970s to sell to the style-conscious public and outfit icons such as Twiggy, Mick Jagger, and Gene Shrimpton. And last point, influence on society. Warhol edgy, straightforward, colorful interpretation of common objects and Hollywood stars changed the art world forever. Such examples are the Willow Box, Campbell Soup, and the Marine Dipsticks from 1962. So I will show you about the artwork that Warhol created. The first one is Campbell Soup Can. The Campbell Soup Can was made in 1962. The meaning of Campbell Soup Can was the mimic, the repetition of uniformity of advertising by carefully reproducing the same image across each individual canvas. The second artwork was below box made in 1964. These boxes were created to showcase the beauty in everyday objects, while also exhibiting the idea that art was all around us in everyday life, and raise a question about what we, as the human race, value as being real art and what we value as just a knockoff. Let's move to the next main point. This main point is about technique. Why technique is so important in that era. The technique come with the pop art style in that time. So pop art can be defined by both its common theme and the technique and processes using during the creation. Many pop artists question what they saw elitist art culture and traditional fine art painting tradition. They instantly rebel and use both new imagery and different painting technique. The new technique were drawn from the commercial world of mass media culture. Common technique included printing, silk screen, collage, mixed media, and the use of blended dots. Pop artists Pop art artists also favor bold color, often used on images that were isolated from the background or taken out of context. The first technique is the butterfly technique. So what is the butterfly technique? The butterfly technique is a primitive printing method similar to etching or letterpress in that a plate is repeatedly inked and multiple reproductions are made from it. Each inking an impression of the original image, producing a unique result repeatedly. Many of them use a butterfly technique, a basic form of printmaking. To make this butterfly, he began by making a drawing either by hand or tracing it from a found image. This technique was the first of many that Warhol used to explore the creative possibility of repeating images. The second technique is silk screen or screen painting. Screen painting is create a unique visual output when compared to digital painting. The ink for screen painting is absorbed deeper, providing clearer edge to the image. Screen painting ink can also be applied thicker, resulting in a long-lasting, brighter, and more vibrant color even on a darker shades. The last technique is of register. During the screen painting, it is typical to use a guide that helps you line up the screen for each successive layer of color, so that it matches the placement of the original image. However, if the artist chooses not to use a guide of register, printing can occur where color and line overlap to striking effect. And while Warhol famously declared that he wanted to be a machine in the way that he made art, this blur lines of color reveal the artist's hand in a way that distances this work from traditional commercial painting. Let's move on to the next slide. This slide is about discussion. Author findings are similar to this finding, but most author findings are based on lifespan of Andy Warhol. However, this source still can be reliable and useful for the future research. Future research can be better than current research as more about the history and of Andy Warhol and his technique. Next slide is about the conclusion. I will come up with the 4 conclusions to learn the history about the guy who named Andy Warhol and to understand the art community attitude in that time. The second is About the citation is not much to say about, and there is no information to cite in this writing much. So it's really hard for me to cite in the paper. Some of the technique that Andy Warhol invented till today is still in use in art and design. When you look at the art from different era, you get unique insight into the people of the time. Let's move on to the next slide. This is the reference I use for the research and this presentation. I think this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you.